Welcome to Music 320 Week 10, Lesson 4, where we're going to build some effects units and add them to a project. And I think we'll base this on the effects units that we worked on earlier in the week, the filter and the digital delay. And we'll add them to a project, and the project we'll work with is the project we started last week. So let's start with a blank max patch with just input and output there so we can test things. And the first thing I want to do is to go to the patch we worked on earlier, digital delay, week 10, part 1. And I'm just going to copy out all of that and paste it in here. So this is going to be our digital delay. Now what we want to do is to create a B patcher with this digital delay and give ourselves some controls that we can use so that we can, I can control it. So let's start off just by giving ourselves an inlet, which is the signal coming in, and an outlet, which is the signal going out. Okay, and we should probably label those. Duplicate that. All right. So we have two things that we can alter in this patch. We want the user to be able to control. The first thing is the frequency of the delay time, which I guess we can use values between about 50 milliseconds and 2000 milliseconds. And the second thing we can control is the feedback level, which will have values between 0 and 0.95. And it's important whenever you're working with controls on objects and effects that you think about, well, what range of values do I want to be using, and what would the best interface object be in order to achieve that. So I'm going to choose a slider for the delay time. Put it up here. And then I'm going to set the range of values in my slider to, well, if I'm going to go from 50 to 2000, that would be a range of 1951. And I'm just going to do the addition in here. So plus 50. And we'll just attach that into here and see that my slider is giving me values between 50 and 2000. Okay, I'm just going to move that over a little bit. Because I'm going to use this number box is going to be visible, I also need to add a set $1 message so that the output from the slider from the number box will set the slider. And finally, I want to make sure that I don't exceed the minimum and the maximum values that this control can have. So now this is working nicely. These two things are interlocked. Okay. Now for the feedback level, I'm going to use a live.gain because I think it's a nice object. Oh, sorry, a live.dial. It's a nice object because it shows the value and it also has a label. But there are a lot of settings in the live.gain, and so you have to be careful. You have to really make sure you've got everything towards the bottom set. So first I'm going to give it a name. I'm going to make sure the type is set to float. I'm going to make sure that the values are 0 to 0.95. I'm going to make sure that it's initially enabled, and I'm going to set the initial value to 0.5 if it's not already there. And then the unit style has to be set to float. It might be int. I think that's all you have to do, but let's connect it up to this, and let's just see if it's working. That looks pretty good. There's one other setting that you've got to make sure that there's a certain number of steps. I've got it set to 100 steps. So between the lowest value and the highest value, there's 100 steps. Okay, so that's looking pretty good. I'm not sure why it became invisible in the background, but it's fine. So I may also want to include external controls for these controls. So for example, if I wanted to be able to control them from outside of the bpatcher, I could do that. So I might consider putting inlets into these objects as well. But for now, I think I'm not going to bother doing that. And then we have to think to ourselves, well, is there anything else that we need to include here? Well, load message are always useful. Let's set that to be 500. Put that in there. Actually, 450, because we're adding 50 to it. And for this one, let's just make sure 0.5 gets fed in. There we go. So that means it's our digital delay is ready to go when it opens up. Okay, let's should we just give it a little test and make sure it's working. I'm going to bring this level down, and I'm going to do that and that. And let's see. Is this working? And there we go, changes to the... Okay. And there's the feedback. Going higher. Okay, so that's working the way it was before. Let's see. So I guess we want to make a bpatcher out of this. And there's one other thing that I might add to this, and that is like a bypass. Most effects units have a bypass where either the signal just goes directly out or the signal goes through the effect. So we can do this with a gate tilde because we're dealing with signals here. And we're basically saying there are, there's two options. And the option is, the default option is number 1. So when the signal comes in, in here, either it goes directly out, down here, or it goes into the whole digital delay structure. So we could use an LED. I'm going to change the inactive color of this to like a really dull yellow. See what it looks like. So it's on or it's not on. So that's our bypass. But the bypass, or the LED, is putting out a value of 0 and 1. So we actually need to add 1 to it so that the 0 and 1 becomes a 1 and a 2. And by default, we're just going to go straight out. Right? So the signal comes in here, it's set to 1, so it goes out directly, and then when we engage the digital delay, it will now route the signal out this outlet. Okay, so in terms of what we actually need in this patch, if we think about going into presentation mode, let's save this as, I'm going to put it in the folder on my desktop called My Max Files, and I'm going to call it Digital Delay. I'm going to call it KH, just to make sure that it doesn't get confused with any other digital delays that might be out there. And I'm going to get rid of these because I don't need them. And then I am going to decide what I need to be able to see. So let's just take that and that and that and that and go Command-Shift-P, put them in presentation mode. And let's put those here. I've got a sort of a mismatch here in my font sizes and so on because I'm making everything so large so we can see it, but I'm going to make them a little smaller. Make that a little smaller. Okay, so, and let's put a panel on here just to give it some definition. I'm going to send that to the back. And I'm going to change the color of this. I don't need that border color. There's a nice color. Put a label at the top. Maybe we'll I'm just going to put it on off rather than bypass. Okay, so there's our digital delay as a B patcher. I'm going to save it again. And remember, there's one other thing I need to do, and that's to set it up so that in the inspector window, it is set to open. Actually, I had the panel selected when I did that. View, inspector window, open in presentation. Okay, so there's my digital delay. I should be able to simply hook it up. It doesn't take any arguments. It's a very simple B patcher, but I should be able just to hook it into my audio chain. Let's save that, and let's do this and build a new one. So I'm going to save this as I'm going to call this filter sweep KH, even though I haven't done anything in it yet. I'll move some of these out of the way. Some of them I might use again. All right, let's make a filter sweep. So I'm going to get rid of a bunch of the guts of this. But this is the same. Don't need that. I'm going to keep the bypass in, the on-off switch, because I'm going to want to do the same thing with the filter. And let's bring in, well, we could either bring in or we could just recreate what we had before with the biquad filter. Let's open the recent patch. This would be part 2. There's a biquad filter in there. I'm going to copy it. I'm going to paste it in here. And I'm going to basically take the signal that came in here and take this signal out, the filtered signal. What I was thinking we would do, I'm gonna change the name, filter sweep, and I think what I was thinking we would do is use a bandpass filter, which could be set to basically move around, right? So we'll set that, and we know that this is 0, 1, 2, 3. So if we put a load mess in here, 3, just going to make sure that this works. Put it to something else. It sets to the band pass, and we can set the queue and those kinds of things ahead of time. We can decide whether we want the user to be able to control this or not. That's really up to us. But the idea of this patch is that we can generate some filter sweeps. So what I want to do is to have another LED which controls a metro. And the metro runs at, let's say, I don't know, let's say 4,000 milliseconds. So every 4,000 milliseconds, the metro will bang, and it will bang a random number. I'm going to say 5,000 is going to be my range of random numbers. And in that range of random numbers, we're going to add 500. Yeah, why not? So the range of values we're going to get will be between 500 and, well, sort of 5,500, 5,499 actually, but in that kind of range, because we're dealing with frequencies here, right? We're always thinking to ourselves, what range of values do we want to put in here? And then what we want to do is we want to use a line object. This is just a regular line object, and I'm going to make the granulation of this, so the update speed of this, fairly quick, like 10, and I'm going to make this floating point. So what we want to do then is we want to have a message going into the line, which is the new value that's been generated, and we want to take 4,000 milliseconds to get there. So for example, if this metro gives us a value of 1,000, that we will go to 1,000 in 4,000 milliseconds. And then at that point, the metro will give us another value, and we'll go to that value. So the idea is that we put all this together, and we put it into the inlet in our filter graph that is the cutoff or center frequency. So that is the third last one. And let's just see if that works. So you can see the filter is sweeping. It's moving around in a kind of a random way. And sometimes it will be more dramatic, and sometimes it'll be less dramatic, depending on what values are generated. So that one, the value was very close to the previous value, so it's hardly moving. And if we really wanted to, we could do some fancy things to ensure that the values are not too close to one another, but we're not going to do that. Okay, so let's do the same thing we did before. Let's put this into presentation mode and decide what it is we want to be able to see in presentation mode. So I would say select that, select this. Some of the other things are already selected, so let me do that. Command-Shift-P, go into presentation, and we have this button, and we're going to have a miniature version of this. We don't need delay time any longer. Oops. Did I somehow, I'm not sure what happened. Not sure where that went. Let me just, somehow I made it really tiny. I know what I did. Ever had your button disappear like that? It was selected when I resized, and it ended up being very, very small. Let's duplicate that and said sweep on off. And I'm just sort of aligning things a little bit. Put that under there. Okay, so there we've got our filter sweep, and we're going to save that. We're also going to ensure that we've set this one up through the inspector window to open in presentation. It's already set because we actually saved as, so it retained that. And then when we turn this off, the filter sweep will stop. And we can still move the values around if we want, and we can adjust the queue. And again, if you didn't want that, you could set this object so it was not clickable by the user if you're afraid of your users. Okay, I'm going to save that. And let's bring those objects into our project as new bee patchers. So I'm going to set up a new project, and I'm going to call it week 10 project. I'm going to bring this down so you can see. And then I'm going to go to all my files, which are somewhere on my desktop. There they are. And I'm going to bring in, this week 9 master. And I showed you in the last video that when I do that, when I bring in week 9 master, it brings in the bee patchers that are part of that. And then I'm going to add some files to the project. In fact, I'm just going to drag them. The digital delay, KH, and the filter sweep, KH. Okay, so I've got all the files I need in my project. Let's look at this. And I'm not going to use these for now. I think those ended up being kind of confusing. So this is what I had. And what I want to do is I want to add these effects units to the patch. So I'm going to do what I did before, which is to have a B patcher and go Command I. Move that over so you can see. And the patcher file, well, again, I know what it is, so I can just type it, or I can hit choose and find it. I'm going to type in digital delay KH, and there my digital delay excuse me, came in. So I can hook that up, and then the other one I have is I'm just going to duplicate that, and I'm going to, instead of digital delay, I'm going to put in filter sweep KH. Now here's an interesting question. Here we actually have options of whether how we want these two effects units to work. Do we want them to work in a sequence, one after the other, or do we want them to work in parallel, where they're both on? And obviously we could do that so that well, we could have them so they're both running. If they're both off, though, then our signal will be twice as loud as it was. So I'm going to put them in a sequence rather than side by side. So I'm going to go through the digital delay, which may or may not be on, and then go to the filter sweep, which may or may not be on as well. Okay, so because when these are off, the sound simply goes through, we don't have a problem of the sound being stopped. All right, so let's go through this process, and we'll record something. We had 5 seconds, and starting now. Now, this is a new recording to test FX. And let's, get a loop going. We'll do a fairly large loop, and we'll play it. This is a new recording to test FX. 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 This is a test. Oh, we have a problem with our filter sweep. FX. This is a new recording to test FX. This is a new recording to test FX. This is a new recording to test FX. This is a new recording to test. Okay, we have to look at our filter sweep and decide what it was that I did wrong. It exists here. So I can select it, I can right click it or control click it and open the original filter sweep KH to see I've got my incoming signal. It's going to I'm going to the wrong thing. There we go. I know that while I was doing that, you were all shouting out, don't connect it into the filter graph. It goes into the biquad filter. So I just didn't hear you. All right. Let's hook that up properly and save it and close it. And let's go back in here and start it playing again. So we'll loop this. This is a new recording to test FX. 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 Okay, a couple things that we might add to the digital delay and the filter sweep is we might want to have a live gain object in there so we can visualize the levels. You know, that just sometimes it's just nice to be able to see that it's working. So, I mean, again, those are easy to add. We can open the original delay KH and add a live.gain here. Make it so that it's, I guess make it horizontal and quite small. And I'm gonna option drag across this. I can actually bring both of these levels in to the live gain. So that also gives us a control on the volume. So let's do a Command Shift P to include that in our presentation. And let's pull it up here. We'll pull that up a little bit so that we've got room for our live gain. Let's put it in there. And we'll save that. I'm going to copy it after I've saved that. You can see it's been updated. Let's open the original of this and do the same thing. Paste that in. Do that. Go into presentation mode and do some adjustments of this. Maybe make it a little bit bigger. We don't have a label there, but of course we would put one in. There we go. Save that and close it. And we can see our filter sweep. We might want to make it a little bit bigger. Make this one a little bit bigger. But now we have an input control on our units. So yeah, this is working pretty well. There are a couple things that you notice that when we click the objects on and off, you'll notice there's a you know, the sound sort of cuts from being on to being off, and we might want to find a way of using a line or something to make that work a little bit better. So let's just have a look at this now to see the additional controls. So I'll start. I'll change the speed a little bit, and we'll put the loop on, and we'll start this playing. And This is a new recording to test FX. 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 This is a new recording. This is a new recording to test FX. This is a new recording to test FX. This is a new recording to test FX. This is a new recording. Okay, so that's all working. And the last thing I wanted to maybe look at today is, well, a couple things to say. You know, it is possible to set up, using an object called the matrix tilde, a way of rearranging the order in which things are processed so that we don't always have to have the digital delay followed by the filter sweep. We could switch it around and have the filter sweep followed, or the filter sweep first and the digital delay second. Next week, we'll be looking at some of the UBC toolbox objects, and there's a matrix object in there that you can use. But the last thing I wanted to do was to simply say that once we've done this, it's very easy to copy and paste, or if we want to be fancy, to build a B patcher which contains you know, all of these four modules together, and to go into the objects and to alter their buffers and so on, and to actually then create a very complex patch very quickly. So I've got, if I go into this, and I'm going to move that over so you can see, oops, and change the buffer name, and change that buffer name, and so on. And the last one. Buffer 4 and buffer 4. I now have 4 of these running, and each of them can be recorded. I can record them at the same time. I could record them separately. I can play them separately, and I can turn on the effects separately. So I've got actually a pretty sophisticated patch with a whole lot of sort of crazy effects possible. And it was actually fairly easy to build because I thought I designed it in a very modular way. I thought about building the component, understood that it was going to have a signal coming in and a signal going out, and not worried about the end product. Then put it together with my other components to build this patch. The other nice thing about working in a sort of modular way is that I now have a digital delay B patcher that I could bring into any patch. And if I decided that I really needed different controls on it, I can simply add it to the original, and it will replicate itself through all the copies that exist in all the projects. So that's as much as I wanted to cover today. I hope you had fun building this. and we'll see you next time.